What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over several quick tips for Fortnite Reload. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like to see more, and comment down below what you think of Fortnite Reload. I'm interested to see what people's opinion is on this game mode as time goes on. And if you guys are unfamiliar with Reload, I did make a video explaining the basics of the game mode and how it works yesterday. So if you know nothing, you should probably watch that video first, because I'm not going to go over all of the basics again in this video. And if you enjoy the video, give it a like, subscribe if you like to see more, and let's get right into it. The first thing is that you can play with Phil. Phil will mean you have random teammates, and I would recommend playing Phil in this game mode. I've seen a lot of people complaining that they only have one friend to play with, or they have no friends that play Fortnite, so this mode sucks for them. In most of the gameplay, I'm going to be playing with Phil, hopefully by myself. I've only played this game mode with two of my friends. Their gamer tags were Sammy I Am and Liani, so if you don't see those names on my team, I was playing entirely with randoms, or maybe I was playing with one of them and then two additional randoms. But I think playing with Phil is nice in this game mode because of the nature of the mode. You respawn if you have a teammate alive. So just having more people on your team, I feel like increases your chances of coming back. And I don't think it is impossible to play with random players and no communication at all. Like I said, I'm doing it in a lot of the gameplay in this video, and I feel like I still had pretty decent teamwork with my teammate as well. A lot of playing off of your teammate in fights and kind of knowing what help they might need in a fight, I think just comes down to being a good player. So even if you don't enjoy playing Phil the most, and you much more enjoy playing with your friends that you actually talk to and play with regularly, I think playing with randoms and learning how to play off of somebody in a fight without having them tell you exactly what you need is a beneficial skill to have, and it will make you a lot better when you do go to playing with other random people, or with other people that you actually know. I think like Fortnite is Fortnite, and like good players know how to play off each other in fights. There often isn't much time to communicate exactly what you need in a fight. It's very like reactionary, you know? So if you get better at that, I think you're just going to be better at fighting in general, and I would recommend playing Phil in this game mode. One huge difference between Reload and traditional BR is that the landing is different. You get glider locked at a lower altitude. So the way landing works in Fortnite is you can close and reopen your glider until you reach, I believe it's 100 meters in BR, and then in Reload it's 40 meters. But either way, once you reach that point, you get glider locked, and then you can no longer close your glider and choose to reopen it. So just keep that in mind. It's messed me up a lot in this game mode, where like I'm just so used to like the regular way of landing in BR that it's like I have to like think about it and remember like, okay, it's different in this game mode. But that's huge for landing off spawn, and also whenever you do come back from being rebooted. A lot of the houses in Reload have a lot more chests than they originally did. Some of these houses and POIs are from chapter 1 and 2 of Fortnite. So you might be familiar with the layout of these houses and where the chests are. But in Reload, there was a lot of loot added to the map, a lot of chests that weren't there before. And there's a 100% chest spawn rate. And the reason why I'm saying this is because with the old loot system, there might be 2 chests at a house, maybe, and it's a chance for that. And so it was kind of grief to land at the same house as your teammate. You'd probably want to spread out and take a different house each. But in Reload, if you have to land at a house with your teammate, like it's just the best option, you're not really griefing that much because there is so much more loot there in this game mode. So if a POI is hot, consider landing at the same house as your teammate. At the very least, you want to land close to them, but there's so much loot added to these houses that I don't think it's bad for 2 people to try to share a house at like Retail or Pleasant Park. Also, a lot of vending machines around the map. You'll see these on the radar, and that each POI I think has a few. These are huge because they're always heal vending machines as of the time I'm recording this video. That might change as time goes on, but the heal vendings you can buy big pots at, you can buy patch up at, which is just very good. If you guys have played this game mode, it often can be a struggle to get heals, especially if your off spawn fights go for too long. So if you're struggling for heals, try to find the nearest vending machine, and you can just buy big pots. Or if you don't find heals for whatever reason, you can buy the big pots, and then you'll get shielded super easily that way. I believe every enemy you eliminate will drop minis and then more ammo than what they had when you eliminated them. So you might eliminate somebody the moment they hit the ground, but they'll drop minis and they'll drop ammo even though they didn't have that. I'm pretty sure. I'm like 99% certain on that. I'm like 100% sure on the minis. The grappler is the same way, where like if you eliminate somebody, it will drop fully loaded even if it wasn't fully loaded when the enemy had it. So someone could find a grappler, use 9 charges, have 1 left, you eliminate them, and then you pick that grappler up, and then it'll have 10 uses. So if you have a grappler and it doesn't have very many uses, consider that, and then there's like any loot around you as grapplers, maybe check that, because if no one has interacted with the one that the eliminated enemy dropped yet, it should be 10 charges. Another thing that's different between this game mode and regular PR is that the reviving is much faster. It's 5 seconds if one person is doing it, and then obviously it gets much faster if teammates join in. I believe it's half each time, so 2 people reviving somebody will be 2.5 seconds. It's very quick. And this is good to keep in mind when you might have an opportunity to revive your teammate, but it's also huge when you're pushing enemies. If you get a knock on a team and then you're like, okay, let's push that, but it takes you a little bit too long to push, or maybe you kind of like stagnated and didn't know whether or not you should push, that enemy that you knocked might end up being revived much faster than you anticipated. And this is something that, again, I had to adjust to when I started playing this game mode, because I kind of have that internal timer in my head of how long like you have to take advantage of a knocked opponent, but it's just much shorter in this game mode. And I would highly recommend wiping enemy teams, squad wiping them. If you want to just get as many kills as possible, it is ideal to kind of cycle teams, like only kill 3 people and then let them respawn. But if you want to win, I would highly recommend squad wiping teams whenever possible, especially if they're good players. If you think this team is solid, I think just getting rid of them, kicking them out of the lobby is huge. Because if you guys don't know how this game mode works, if anybody is alive in the squad, you're able to respawn after a certain amount of time. And then the teammates doing actions results in a lower time that their team has to wait. And I've seen this a lot off spawn, or I've had a lot of matches where, like, in the early game, we're fighting at a POI, and it's basically just my team and another team, but we're just fighting for so long because neither team never gets the squad wipe. And then because of that, the match is just basically ruined, because we've been fighting at like Pleasant Park the entire time, and Pleasant Park is in zone. And so now like other teams start showing up that have like had more time to loot other stuff like supply drops in other areas and then travel to here. And if you're just fighting the same team over and over again at the same POI, eventually you're just going to run out of heals and loot, and you're just going to be very shambles, and it's going to be very hard for you to play the game in the later stages. So early game especially, even if you do want to try to cycle kills, I would recommend just squad wiping an enemy team. And I've seen so many times where like it's so easy to just eliminate that final player, but like the other players are just more concerned about loot. Like you get 3 kills and then there's a bunch of loot on the ground, and instead of chasing that last player and just getting them out of the game and then you have access to all of that loot now, the teammates are so concerned about loot, so that other person gets away and then their teammates come back and you keep fighting them over and over again, and then that loot just diminishes over time, and then you don't even get to play with it anymore because people show up that are much better looted, or the storm shows up or something. So I think a huge kind of aspect to your success in this game mode will be how quick you wipe your starting POI. If you can clear it quick and eliminate the other teams and not have that continuous off spawn fight for like half the game, you're probably going to do well. If you spend all game fighting at your spawn POI, it's going to be harder for you to be relevant in the late game. You still could, but like it's going to be harder. Another thing that's huge in this game mode is going to be supply drops, and this is one of the reasons why I think it's like important to clear your POI and then rotate around the map and get these supply drops, especially later on in the game, because the supply drops have good weapons. I believe they typically drop purple or gold weapons. They typically drop a good amount of heals, I think, but they also, I don't know if it's guaranteed, but pretty much every supply drop I've opened, I feel like I get either shield bubbles, bunkers, or bushes. And having these cover items is going to be huge for the later stages of the game. So getting supply drops, I think, is very important. But also, you can choose to land on these. So I talked before about that continuous off-spawn fight that just never ends, right? If that's just going on over and over again, and you're getting that like smaller and smaller pile of loot where maybe you just get like a white pump and a white AR because all the loot is just mix matched around the POI and stuff, I think it's just better to land on a supply drop, and then you get that supply drop. Maybe there's more supply drops in the area, maybe there's more untouched loot in the area, because there is a solid amount of loot in between the POIs as well. Getting these supply drops is huge, and it can be nice for regaining from the match or after you've cleared your initial POI so you can get some good loot. You can also choose to bleed out when you're knocked and then start your reboot time rather than waiting for a revive. Because the way the timer in this game works, once you are spectating, that's when the timer starts. And so if you know you're not going to get revived anyways, why waste like 10-15 seconds just waiting to not get revived when you can start your reboot timer and then, you know, you're progressing towards that, because the timer doesn't count when you're knocked, it's when you're actually dead. So I think there's a lot of times where you should just accept that you're not going to get revived and then respawn, especially if, like, you know, maybe you and a team fought, you got knocked, and then your teammates decided to like back away. In that instance, you're never getting revived probably, so you should just take the reboot and then, you know, start that timer. Bloom is huge in this game mode. If you guys are familiar with older Fortnite, or, you know, you played during Fortnite OG, the third person weapons have bloom, and this is a mechanic for the crosshair expanding as you shoot the weapon. And the way these third person weapons work is the bullet can go anywhere within your reticle. If you were to make a circle with the outer dashes of your crosshair, you know, those 4 dashes on like the top, bottom, left, right. If you were to make a circle out of the outer edge of each dash, your bullets can go anywhere within that radius. And that's what makes the guns kind of random. But there is a skill in controlling bloom. If somebody's very far away, you're probably going to want to tap fire or burst. If they're close enough to you, then you're going to be able to fill most of your crosshair with the opponent. And then that means you have very good odds to actually hit the opponent. The skill in managing bloom is just managing the size of your crosshair based on how close your opponent is to you, because when they're closer to you, they're going to be larger, and so they're going to occupy more of your crosshair. In short, you can full spam in close range, medium range. At very long range, you're probably going to want to tap fire, especially with something like the heavy AR. But the hammer AR is also in the loot pool currently for Reload, and this is a weapon from Chapter 3. And kind of as time went on with like Fortnite Chapter 3, 4, and 5, the third-person weapons started to have way less bloom, and the hammer AR has minimal bloom even when full sprayed. Like, it does have some, but if you were to compare it to like the basic regular AR, the regular AR has a lot more. So if you just don't want to think about this at all, I would recommend just use the hammer AR, and that's like the best option to be able to full spray, and it is very, very good. I really like the hammer AR. One of the biggest pieces of advice I think that will have the single most impact on your success rate in this game mode is just to avoid tilted towers, whether that's early game or in the mid game. So early game, like I talked about before, a lot of matches just kind of divulge into this off spawn fight that never ends between the same teams. I feel like that's even more so true at tilted because more players land there, and there's just so much area to tilted. Like, there's so many buildings and so many layers to the buildings that it's harder to just eliminate that team and get them out of the game and then get your loot. I feel like if you're going to go tilted, you need to clear it quick and then probably get out of there, because not only is there a lot of loot, so it takes longer to clear, it takes longer to fight, it takes longer to squad wipe, but it's surrounded by mountains, and basically the rest of the POIs kind of rotate into these mountains, and it's hard to like do anything if you've been in a continuous spawn fight, never accumulating any actual like good loot, and now you're getting third-partied by people who have had more time to loot. It's the same problem that I talked about before with the off-spawn fights, but it's even more so problematic in tilted. And then the same thing is true in the mid to late game. If you're posted up on those mountains, you might get tags on people, but it's very hard to get eliminations, and it's very hard to squad wipe without actually getting into tilted, because of what we talked about with the bloom. If you're like 50 meters away, 60 meters away, it's hard to just full squad wipe people with ARs. If we had red dot ARs, you could maybe do it, but with the third person ARs only, just being posted up on a mountain and just tagging people for like several minutes in tilted, I feel like doesn't really benefit you, and you're likely just going to get third-partied by even more people coming to clean up tilted. So if you want to do well, I would just avoid tilted, avoid landing there, and avoid rotating into it or on those mountains around it, and just go into dead side. If zone forces you to go there, it forces you to go there, and that is what it is. But a lot of games will go somewhere else, and if you get deeper into that new area, while everyone is just like worried about tilted and worried about holding tilted, then you're probably going to have a much easier time winning the game, I think. Another thing that's going to make you have a much easier time winning the game, I kind of touched on this earlier, is the cover items. So like porta bunkers are the best, I think, because they're a permanent cover item. But even bushes and shield bubbles, having these in the end game, typically the team that has these will win the game if the other team doesn't have them. and or like a lot of the in-game fights kind of become bunker versus bunker fighting, at least in zero build. So I would highly recommend carrying these. Typically in reload, I've been carrying shotgun, AR, bunkers, heals, and then a mobility item like shockwaves or grappler. And just at least having somebody in your team carry these is nice, but I think having multiple people just gives you more options in a fight versus the opponents. And that's probably going to increase your likelihood of success. And you can spray these bunkers, and you can spray people's environmental cover. I feel like so many people are worried about like spraying a bunker. Obviously, you don't want a hard peek and spray a bunker because then you can get beamed. But if a team puts a bunker, they're not untouchable, especially because it's squads. If all 4 of you or if several of you spray out the bunker wall, you can delete it pretty quickly. Or if someone's behind a tree, you can spray out those trees pretty quickly. And that's why having these bunkers is nice, because you do have continuous cover. If people are only relying on natural cover, then you can get rid of that pretty quickly in the team game mode. 2 things that I feel like are kind of similar. I feel like you should know when to reset. This kind of goes back into the continuous off spawn fighting, but if you just continuously opt into that over and over again, you're probably going to just grief your game and eventually get third partied by a team that has much more loot. But if you feel like you're in that situation and you're coming off spawn and you see an area that has like a few supply drops, I feel like landing there instead and looting those supply drops and then maybe getting loot in the surrounding area is much more likely to help your team work out and win than just continuously fighting the same team off spawn for the same loot and just kind of trading weapons back and forth and no one like squad wiping, you know? So knowing when to kind of like reset, I think is good, but a lot of people, you know, their ego doesn't want to do that. And then the same is also true. I feel like you should know when to cut your losses and just leave your teammates to live to fight another day. If a team fight is going very poorly, like let's say a fight happens, your team knocked 1, 3 of your teammates got knocked. You could maybe get in there and then 1v3, but the likelihood of that happening is quite low, especially if the opponents aren't weak or you have no intel on their health. Just getting away and kind of staying alive and letting your teammates come back, again, is more likely to help them succeed. So I feel like you should know when to get away, or like recognize a fight's going poorly, I should just get away, but also know how to play this in the sense that like if you're the last man standing, you probably just want to play a bit more passive and hopefully wait for your teammates to respawn so that they can get back into the game. And then even if you do get eliminated, they can stay alive for you. You know what I mean? I think both of those things, knowing when to reset and kind of knowing when to cut your losses in a fight, is huge. One huge thing always in Fortnite, but even more so in this game mode, is just be ready for third parties. There's always going to be third parties in Fortnite, but this game mode is exceptionally chaotic and exceptionally fast paced with people coming back and landing on you and who knows what. So just never get too tunnel visioned on a fight. It'll happen to everybody, but like try not to get too tunnel visioned on a fight. And if you're always getting tunnel visioned on fights, this is probably something you need to work on, because the more tunnel visioned you are, the more likely you're going to be exposing yourself to potential third parties and not really recognizing how exposed you really are, you know? And then one final thing I want to touch on that I feel like is kind of, it makes a lot of sense, but I've seen people confused by it, is the final reboot time. So late into the game, you'll get a notification that rebooting will be disabled in 90 seconds. And anybody who dies prior to that 90 seconds will come back if a teammate survives. So I've seen people surprised that they're coming back because the timer, let's say they died at 1 second left, right? And then 1 second ticks, they're already kind of in the reboot phase, but no one who dies after that is going to come back. So just because the rebooting phase is over, that 90 seconds expired, there still may be a few people that died or that were already, their timer was already ticking down before the window ended. I guess that'd be the way to describe it. If your timer is ticking down before that window ends, you will come back, and that's nice to know for yourself, but it's also nice to know for enemies. If you eliminate somebody and there's like 10 seconds left on that timer, that person is going to come back if their teammates stay alive. So just keep that in mind. And when you get to that end game stage, any elimination you're able to get is nice because you're not on a timer to eliminate people's squads anymore. In a normal game, you kind of have a timer to eliminate a squad before those people you eliminated come back. In the end game, once rebooting is disabled and nobody is left in the reboot phase, then any elimination you get increases your chances of winning. So if you can get a pick in the end game, thirst it. That person's not coming back. Now that's not a full squad. And if you have a numbers advantage in the end game, that's definitely a huge advantage. But that is going to be it for this video. I hope you guys found this helpful, informative, interesting as always. If you did, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and let me know down in the comments below what you think of Fortnite Reload.